first, I'm a cheat first. I know I'm a bad bitch, but I met a bad boy, and he worst. Oh, you think you done found you a dumb chick? Nope, go and do your research. I'ma break a nigga heart over and over until he scream nurse. Call that bitch to fix it. I'ma tell him straight up, no slick shit. I done gave you my heart, gave you my trust. Niggas were given to lust. Okay then, you wanna play, let's play. Baddies never need new daddy on the way. Maybe I'll call up that baller I met at the Louis store. He looked like a spoiler. I'ma make him spend on me every dollar. Then I'll put that dog on a leash, new collar. I'ma holler, fuck this nigga that I'm with, cause he don't even love me. He getting too comfortable, like he think nobody wants me. Oh, you made a mistake, oh, that's so disappointing. Now I guess it's my turn, time for some flaunting. Cheat first, I'm a cheat first. I know I'm a bad bitch, but I met a bad boy, and he worse. Oh, you think you done found you a dumb chick? Nope, go and do your research. I'ma break a nigga heart over and over until he scream nurse. Call that bitch to fix it. I'ma tell him straight up, no slick shit. I'm tired of these niggas. I swear I'm so tired of these niggas. I'm lying to these niggas. I'm cashing out, then I'm firing these niggas. Cheat first, I'm a cheat first. I know I'm a bad bitch, but I met a bad boy, and he worse. Oh, you think you done found you a dumb chick? No, go and do your research. I'ma break a nigga heart over and over until he scream nurse. Call that bitch to fix it. I'ma tell him straight up, no slick shit.
The reported plan by Megan Thee Stallion and Roc Nation to shape the narrative around her split with Klay Thompson appears to be unraveling, and it's happening out in the open. Rather than a quiet, clean breakup, this situation has evolved into yet another very public storyline. Most celebrity couples end things the same way. They stop appearing together, quietly unfollow each other, scrub the couple photos, and eventually the public connects the dots on their own. Low-key, no drama. But that's rarely how things unfold in Megan's world. Each breakup seems to arrive with its own carefully constructed narrative, one where she consistently ends up positioned as the wronged party. And that pattern is exactly why people are paying close attention to how this Klay Thompson situation is being handled. Think back to the peak of Megan's run. She was everywhere. Every major stage, every headline, every awards ceremony. She even took home Songwriter of the Year, which sparked its own wave of debate online. But throughout that entire period, one theme kept surfacing that no one could really ignore. There was a sustained media cycle built almost entirely around Megan as a victim. Every segment, every headline, every award show moment reinforced that same angle. She'd step onto those stages and receive a level of reverence that went beyond celebrating her music. Crowds rising, applauding, treating her like the embodiment of resilience. That image became deeply embedded in her public persona, regardless of how people personally felt about it. Then came Klay Thompson, and almost immediately it looked like a new play was being drawn up. The perception that spread online was that Megan saw this relationship as a chance to rebuild her image from the ground up. Softer, more reserved, almost unrecognizable compared to what people had seen before. The shift in tone was noticeable enough that people started paying close attention, particularly that moment on the golf course, riding around with Klay, behaving as though certain things were entirely new experiences for her, moving like a completely reinvented version of herself. And that's where the skepticism really took hold, because in the internet age, nothing disappears. Every version of you that's ever been documented is still out there, sitting in someone's camera roll or saved to a server somewhere, ready to be pulled up and compared side by side with whatever you're presenting today. People caught on quickly. The contrast between the soft, reserved image she was projecting with Klay and the footage already circulating online created an obvious inconsistency that was hard to overlook. The "this is all new to me" performance didn't land the way it may have been intended to. And from Klay's perspective, the picture starts to come into focus. This is a man with a long, decorated career and a reputation he's worked to keep reasonably intact. The idea that he was going to step into something serious without a clear-eyed view of what he was walking into doesn't really hold up. By most accounts, he never appeared to be treating the situation with the same level of seriousness that was being projected onto it, and that gap ultimately changed the entire trajectory of things. Once it became clear that the rebrand wasn't producing the results it was built for, the tone shifted sharply. Things went from soft and curated to emotional and very public very fast. Megan took to social media to share her perspective directly, writing about feeling deceived, referencing being introduced to family while she believed things were serious and committed. That post poured fuel onto an already volatile situation and drew even more public attention into what was becoming an increasingly messy fallout. Her comments about being unsure of monogamy and needing space are worth reading carefully because they reveal something about the expectations she may have already formed behind the scenes. The mention of cold feet suggests she believed the relationship had already reached a certain level of commitment, like the position was hers, the future was mapped out, and everything was progressing towards something official. From the outside, she appeared to be moving as though that role was already secured. The cooking, the quality time, the glimpses of a more grounded and domestic side, all of it painted a picture of someone who genuinely believed this relationship was heading somewhere significant, which is exactly why the fallout hit as hard as it did. When reality didn't match the version she had built in her mind, the gap was impossible to quietly absorb. But here's the thing about Klay Thompson. The idea that he could be easily swept up or caught off guard doesn't really hold together. This is someone who has spent his entire adult life in high-profile environments, surrounded by outsized personalities, constant attention, and every kind of social dynamic imaginable. The suggestion that confidence or charm would register as something new or disarming to him simply doesn't reflect his background. And that's where the fundamental disconnect becomes most visible. And if part of the approach involved presenting herself as something uniquely different from what he'd encountered before, the people watching online were quick to challenge that logic. Klay's years playing in major markets, environments known for fast-paced social scenes and larger-than-life personalities, make it difficult to argue that he was walking into unfamiliar territory. He'd seen it all before, in one form or another. Once that reality settled in, the whole dynamic shifted, and it shifted publicly. The way it read from the outside, Megan appeared to believe she had the situation secured. Then Klay stepped back. He made it clear in his own way that he wasn't interested in filling the role that had already been written for him, and that signal, once received, triggered an immediate and very visible reaction. Rather than processing things privately, the situation moved onto social media almost instantly. That's when people started using the phrase "crash out," because the posts carried a raw, emotional energy that felt unfiltered. And while that kind of reaction is deeply human and completely understandable, most people tend to navigate breakups and disappointments without broadcasting them. They take down the pictures, step away from the situation, and keep moving without turning it into public content.
Lori Harvey is a name that keeps coming up as a contrast in these conversations for good reason. When her relationships have ended, regardless of who was involved or how high profile the situation was, her response has been consistent. No lengthy posts, no public explanations, no drawn-out emotional timeline for the internet to dissect. She quietly removes the person from her presence and continues forward. That approach communicates something: composure, self-assurance, and understanding that some things don't need an audience, and people pick up on that immediately. With Megan, the pattern runs in the opposite direction. When things go sideways, it goes public, and once the narrative shifts into that public space, it takes on its own life. The original intent behind a post stops mattering the moment it goes live. People have already seen it, saved it, and formed their opinions. There's no retrieving it after that. And in this particular situation, that dynamic is playing out in real time, in front of everyone watching.
That real hot girl shit. Real hot girl shit. Did y'all have fun at the Moulin Rouge? Make some noise for the whole ensemble.
But the situation didn't stop at social media. Megan took it a step further and gave a formal statement to TMZ. And that decision transformed what was already a public breakup into a full media event. Rather than allowing things to settle, the story got pushed deeper into the spotlight. The statement itself was framed around her terms. She positioned the split as her choice, centering themes of trust, loyalty, and self-respect. The language was measured, referencing peace, clarity, and a focus on moving forward. On the surface, it read as composed and intentional, but the execution contradicted the message. When someone publicly states they want privacy and peace, then simultaneously hands their story to one of the largest celebrity news outlets in the world, the inconsistency doesn't go unnoticed. People caught it immediately, and it colored how everything that followed was received. The apparent expectation was that public opinion would swing hard against Klay Thompson, that her framing of events would generate a wave of support and shift the narrative in her favor. Instead, the reaction came back divided. Audiences weren't uniformly rallying behind one side, and that split fundamentally changed the outcome of what this rollout was likely designed to accomplish. Then it escalated further. Footage began circulating from her live performances, clips showing visibly emotional moments on stage that were directly connected in the coverage to the breakup. Every major blog picked up the same angle, pushing the same framing. On paper, it should have deepened the sympathy. In practice, it deepened the skepticism. A significant portion of viewers started questioning whether those moments were being deliberately packaged and timed for maximum emotional impact. The rollout, the social media posts, the TMZ statement, the performance clips, all surfacing in rapid succession, started to feel coordinated to many observers. And once people begin interpreting something as calculated, it becomes almost impossible to also receive it as authentic. The two readings cancel each other out. Rather than a unified wave of public support, the public response fractured. And alongside the divided reactions, a broader conversation emerged about how the situation was being framed overall. Some attempted to attach wider cultural arguments to it, but others pushed back firmly, pointing out that this was a specific situation involving two specific public figures, and generalizing it beyond those details was a way of avoiding the actual story. Ultimately, the narrative didn't land where it was aimed. Public opinion refused to consolidate on one side, and the audience remained skeptical of whether the full picture was actually being presented. From there, the commentary took on a life of its own. Personalities like Lonnie Love weigh in, and the tone shifted towards something more sardonic than sympathetic. Jokes started circulating suggesting Klay Thompson had navigated the whole thing with a quiet, deliberate composure, that he'd read the situation accurately and acted accordingly. That framing spread quickly. DJ Academics added his own perspective, pointing to Klay's career, his background, and the environments he's moved through his entire professional life. The argument was straightforward. Expecting someone with that kind of experience to be reshaped by a relationship that lasted a matter of months was never a realistic expectation to begin with. That take gained traction fast. What resulted was a conversation that nobody fully controlled. Instead of clean sympathy, the public response became a rotating mix of humor, pointed observations, and ongoing debate that kept both names in circulation, but not in the way one side of this clearly intended. And that outcome, more than anything else, illustrates just how unpredictable public opinion becomes when a private situation is handed over to the internet piece by piece. Different audiences absorbed the same story and arrived at completely different conclusions. No single narrative took over, and the spotlight, rather than focusing where it was directed, scattered in every direction at once. That theory kept circulating long after Megan and Klay were first seen publicly. Social media filled up with think pieces and hot takes, trying to decode what the relationship represented beyond two people simply dating. One viral argument claimed that certain men reacted so strongly to the pairing because they had formed a particular perception of Megan beforehand, and seeing a high-profile, respected athlete treat her as a serious romantic partner created a kind of cognitive dissonance that sparked debate across platforms. That argument quickly expanded into something broader. Some voices framed the relationship as proof of a larger point, that lifestyle and public image ultimately don't determine relationship outcomes, and that success and status can override everything else in how someone is perceived and pursued. It was an ambitious theory, and for a moment it had real momentum online. But when the relationship didn't develop into something lasting, that momentum reversed. The same arguments that had been made so confidently started getting picked apart. People pointed out that real-world relationship dynamics rarely follow the neat narratives constructed on social media, and this situation became a frequently cited example in exactly those kinds of conversations. Figures like DJ Academics continued to stoke the discussion with takes that leaned heavily into humor and pointed commentary. His posts kept the story trending and consistently framed things in Klay's favor, which drew in new reactions from different corners of the audience and kept the overall conversation alive well past its natural expiration point. By this stage, the situation had grown far beyond the two people at the center of it. It had become a sprawling online debate about relationships, public perception, personal reputation, and what people believe they're entitled to expect from one another. Then the conversation took another unexpected turn when people started drawing comparisons to Stephen Curry and Ayesha Curry. The contrast being highlighted was about public image, how differently certain couples are perceived depending on the narratives that surround them and the reputations they've built over time. It was a comparison that had no direct relevance to what actually happened between Megan and Klay, but it resonated widely enough to pull the discussion even further away from the actual facts and deeper into broader opinion territory. Through all of it, one point of general agreement did emerge across most of the commentary. People broadly acknowledged that situations like this are rarely as simple as one person being entirely right and the other entirely wrong, and that public reaction almost never captures the full reality of what happens between two people behind closed doors. Opinions remain divided, and the audience never fully consolidated around a single version of events. That standard applies across the board, regardless of who's involved, and most people aren't actually disputing that part. The pushback is rooted in the breakup itself. Breakups happen, and no one is arguing otherwise. What people are responding to is the perception that once the relationship ended, things shifted into something more deliberate. The concern being raised consistently online is that the aftermath began to look less like someone processing a difficult experience and more like a coordinated effort to shape how Klay Thompson is viewed publicly. That's where the resistance is concentrated, not in the fact that the relationship ended, but in how everything that followed was handled.
There's a baseline expectation most people hold when it comes to public figures and breakups. Both sides step back, handle things privately, and keep moving. What happened here looked different. The steady involvement of outlets like TMZ, the sequenced release of updates, the emotional performance clips landing on blogs in quick succession, all of it kept the story on life support well past the point where it would have naturally faded. And that pattern is what made people start questioning the intent behind the whole thing. None of that erases the reality that relationships are complicated and that genuine pain is involved when something falls apart. Those things can be true simultaneously. But the argument being repeated most consistently is straightforward. When it's over, end it cleanly. Step away from the public arena and let both people move forward without manufacturing a prolonged narrative that keeps dragging everyone back in. Looking at the full timeline from beginning to end, the trajectory of public opinion has moved steadily in one direction, and it hasn't been moving in Megan's favor. That's what makes this situation so striking. Whatever the strategy was, it appears to have overshot. Rather than generating the wave of support it may have been designed to produce, each new development introduced more skepticism, more debate, and more doubt about the motivations behind it all. Then, past figures connected to Megan started resurfacing in the conversation. Subtle comments and indirect shots began circulating from people who had their own history with the situation, adding more layers to an already complicated picture. Streamers and online commentators jumped in with real-time reactions, some openly declaring their support for Klay Thompson based on their own read of events. And inevitably, older controversies got pulled back into the discussion, including conversations tied to the Tory Lanez case, which pushed the whole thing even further out of control. Now the whole situation sits divided right down the middle. One side believes Megan was genuinely responding to a painful experience and reacted the way anyone might when they feel wronged. The other side believes the response crossed a line into something more calculated, a deliberate effort to damage someone's reputation under the cover of emotional vulnerability. Where do you stand on it? Drop your perspective in the comments. Do you think Megan Thee Stallion was reacting authentically to a bad situation, or did this whole thing get pushed further than it ever needed to go? Subscribe for more breakdowns.